board meeting of the trustees for March 18th, 2021, and it's 4:01. Want to have a approval of the agenda, conflict of interest?
Move to approve the agenda.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Terry, aye. Terrell, aye.
Connie, aye.
Reese, aye.
Okay. Next, we want to go into the GPA calculations options.
Okay. What we're looking at here, just to kind of back up a little bit, at the previous meeting, the board had authorized us to go ahead and use operating reserves to pay the gas bill that we anticipated getting resulting from the extreme weather. And so what we're looking at today is we did receive the gas bill. We had on the contracted amounts, the total on what we received was $1,748,541, which was less than the 1.9 we had originally estimated. But through DAR's effort, we were able to save just about $160 on that process by the time we finally got our bill. So we were able to do some different pricing and such to make that work out. But what we're proposing to do under the original discussion, when we talked about this, we were talking about going through billing cycle 3, 1, 2, 3. In other words, cycle 3 was going to get hit twice with the gas purchase adjustment, simply because of the way we 5-week average our purchases to do that. And so what we're proposing to do now is, so that no one group of customers gets hit twice, is that before this cycle 3 bills, which it's ready to bill, is rolling the GPA back to 0. And so it would go through a full...
Can you explain what the GPA is?
Okay, I'm sorry, yes. The gas purchase adjustment. That's basically the adjustment we make for fluctuations in the extra gas that we have to buy on a daily basis. There's been a number of questions brought up about how we buy gas, and I put some original comments when we did the original press release that approximately 30% of our load is variable. And so that's why we only long-term contract 70%, because we didn't want to long-term contract something that was variable all the time. To give you an example, our largest industrial customer on a daily basis ranges anywhere from 25 to 40% of our daily usage, and it's just too variable to contract long-term. I mean, some days they may use 5% of what their average is, other days they may use 110. And that gas is based on their production, and they only know a day ahead what their production demands are going to be. That's as far as we can forecast. And so with those types of conditions with our current marketplace, it's been a long-standing practice at HMU that the cap on what we long-term contract is 70%. And we just believe that's just a prudent business step. And the other thing about it is our current contract goes back to October of 2017 was when we did an extension. And that contract was considered and approved while we had a different ex-board member as chair. So it was out there, it was in the public, it was discussed, and it was a board consensus that was the way to go. And like I said, it was based somewhat on past practice. It was also based on recommendations. We use BP North America, one of the largest brokerage companies for gas sales in the country. They're our advisor and they're our broker in this regard. And sometimes that's who you defer your decisions to. And to put another additional perspective on that, we use municipal funds, and I don't care what anybody says, hedging is gambling, because you're betting on an up or down movement of prices. And we just don't believe it's prudent. And I believe there are even restrictions in our investment policies, restrictions on any type of board of trade. Now, what people have to understand is hedging on the board of trade is totally different than what your pipeline price is when you take delivery on the pipeline. because those pipeline prices are all set by what's called the Henry Hub, which is the marketing arm, or one of the marketing points for gas delivery. And what you take out of the pipeline is based on what they set the price at, and that's it. And so, I mean, that's when your demand exceeds what you've scheduled for the day. You pay the pipeline price. So, I mean, that's just the mechanics of the gas business. So I just kind of wanted to bring that point up. And to give you some other perspective, I was in an IUB meeting last Friday, and one of the larger investor-owned gas utilities, they have a market from Arkansas all the way up in through the Dakotas, and their average price on gas was in the neighborhood of $120 a decatherm. DAR was able to buy our gas at 81. So in that instance, we even beat the big boys that have a trading desk. So I don't well, there should be a limit to the criticism, because I think we do a good job, just let me put it that way. We do everything we can to control costs and manage costs, and I think our people do a pretty good job. So that being said,
Having said that, I think what we need to focus on is the fact that we had 70% of it contracted.
yes.
It could have been a lot worse had we not had 70% of it contracted. It could have been really bad.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we need to focus on the positive, that we had that much done, and it could have been bad.
And I mean, you really can't compare to other communities. I mean, there's a community up in the Okoboji area, and you know, they basically absorb the cost, but they're a small residential community around a lake. They don't have industrial customers. They have very few commercial customers. It's basically residential. A lot easier to predict that load year over year, especially in that northern sector where they're even colder than we are on an annual basis. So I mean, you just can't compare oranges and apples and you know, try to say, well, you should have done this, should have done that. I mean, I've never been much for Monday morning quarterbacking, but that's what it's amounted to. So anyway, that being said, the way the gas purchase adjustment, like I said, is based on a 5-year rolling average, and like I said, under that scenario, cycle 3 would have been hit twice with the gas purchase adjustment. So what we're requesting is the board to waive and allow us to move GPA back to 0, starting with this pending cycle 3 billing. And I made a statement at the city council meeting where we would run, or where we would reset it to 0 for a billing cycle 3, 1, 2, and then we would readjust. But based on the fact that we've still got some information coming in, we think that we should probably just reset it to 0 and then continue to monitor that on a monthly basis until all this settles out. Because I'll give you an example on the electric side. We received notices from both SPP and MISO that we had to ante up more on our credit deposits. And I think they were more or less automatic notifications because our demand had gone up and our usage had gone up. And in talking to both, or talking with SPP, now it sounds like even though we sent those funds in, some of that's going to be waived and credited back. So it's those types of adjustments that are still going on that I think it's just prudent. Set it to 0, leave it at 0 until all this stuff kind of levels out and we can get a good feel for where we sit. Does that make sense?
So you're, maybe no.
Okay.
The first group's already been billed.
We've gone through a cycle 3, cycle 1, cycle 2 with the GPA.
Every customer in town has billed.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
so
every
there are
customer's
no
billed.
additional bills
There's 3
since.
cycles,
Okay.
they've all been billed.
Yeah, and then because of the way the average on that 5-week, cycle 3 is the only one that would have been hit twice.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
So that's what you're saying, to waive it back to.
Yeah,
That way, everybody's treated the same.
right. Everybody gets hit once, and then we zero it out, and then we move forward from there and monitor the market for any adjustments until we feel comfortable that we can reset it again.
Yes.
Does that make a little bit more sense now? Okay.
So if there's a motion, the motion would be to set the GPA to 0 for cycle 3, cycle 1, and cycle 2. At this point, or until further notice.
Until we will evaluate it on a billing cycle basis, until all of this incoming adjustment and waiver of fees and
That's
everything else.
problematic from when our meetings are though. 'cause we
Right,
wouldn't be
that's-
able
Yeah,
to
that's
do
the
that.
issue, yeah, that's the
So-
issue.
So if you're gonna do it per cycle, then the board needs to give Ken the permission to put that back into place. Otherwise, you have to, have a special meeting or just do it at every board meeting.
How about if we do this, we can, we'll monitor on a cycle basis, report to the board, and, then, you know, if we see any red flags or anything coming up,
Because basically cycle 3 is always billed right before our second
right
board
before the
meeting.
second one, yeah. So it's just kind of a timing thing.
So how does the spot price now compare to our contract price?
Spot price now is gonna be back down to normal. Once we get through this next period, it'll be back down to where it was exactly at almost. Our spot gas is a little cheaper right now than our firm gas. It's back down again, so.
And I think that's another thing to make sure everybody knows, that sometimes the spot price is actually lower than the contract price.
And that's the credit you see on your bill
Right.
every month. In parentheses, you know, GPA, you've always been getting a credit for, I think, 2010, there's always been a credit on our bills because spot gas is a little cheaper and it keeps our total gas down, which we pass back on to the customer.
Just to kind of give you guys an idea, we went back through past billing registers, and from July of 2020 through January of 21, customers received $360,000 back on their bills during that 7-month period.
Because the spot price was a little lower than the contract price.
Right, yeah.
I think it's important everybody knows that. That's kind of a big deal.
And
the other-
they've
the other
been
thing-
receiving credits all the way back to 2010, so.
And isn't it also that if we contract for X amount of gas and don't use it because it's mild or whatever, we have to sell it back, and we sell it back at a loss, right?
Sometimes
Sell it
it's a
back at
loss.
the spot price or lower.
Yeah, or lower, so I
It
mean,
can go either way. so.
you know, I mean, since we have no storage capability, or haven't had for what, some long time,
Yeah.
okay, I
Yeah,
mean.
we sell it back for whatever
Yeah.
the spot price is, yeah.
Because, I mean, it's a fine line on how much you contract for, and so,
Right.
yeah, it's easy to say, well, let's contract for 80-90%, mild winter or whatever, we're stuck with that, and then, you know, the 300 and some thousand that we saved on bills for 6 months is no longer there,
Right. Yeah.
so.
So are there any questions on that? One other thing, I guess I can do it now or do it after you take the vote, it's just some additional information on how other companies are dealing with some of that, and I guess we could hold that conversation off, I'll let Alex maybe address that at the end, so.
Okay.
So our motion needs to be to put the adjusted,
And the reason we need the
Yes.
board to vote on this is because we have a policy in place that says the GPA will be passed on to the customer. So if we're not gonna pass it on, we felt the board needs to vote to say, don't pass that on, make it a 0.
And then, what, amend that
For
to
cycle.
say that it'll be reviewed at the next, or for the next few months or whatever?
Add on that you either want me to have the authority or to bring it back to the board at a future date.
Or
talk to
updates,
the
yeah.
admin committee before, you can make the motion to 0 it out for cycle 3, cycle 2, cycle 1. And then when we have because we'll have our board meeting in April, and cycle 3 would be billed before that board meeting, so.
and if we have to have a special board meeting, we can have a special board meeting too, if something big.
So just
happens.
right now, do it for cycle 3, 2, and 1.
I would just do it for cycle 3, 2, and 1, and then we go back to our original policy, and then if we need to do something different, we can.
We went 11 years without having any problems, so the odds of it happening again in
Right.
May are very unlikely.
The industry says in the 85 years these pipelines operated in this neck of the woods, they've never had this is extreme type of an event. And, you know, the state, 25 years, coldest weather in 25 years in Iowa, so.
Okay. I just want to make sure the motion is stated correctly so that the billing department, the customers, and the board are all on the same page.
So I will make the motion that we move the gas price adjustment to 0 for billing cycles 3, 2, and 1, and then we will monitor it and make any adjustments that we need to at the end of those cycles.
Okay. That'll work.
I'll second that.
Roll call vote.
Terry, aye.
Terrell, aye.
Connie, aye.
Reese, aye.
Next, we have the use of the reserves for any shortfall.
And that, we just wanted to bring that to the board's attention, that if we move that GPA to 0, that anything between what we pay and what we end up collecting through GPA will be a shortfall, but it'll fall within what we've paid with you operating reserves. So we can take a board action on that, or we can just treat that as an informational item. I think I'd feel more comfortable if the board would take action just to acknowledge that fact.
So are we going to need to amend the budget at some point in time?
Yes,
Because
well,
our
usually what
costs
we
are gonna be
do,
high.
usually what we do is our budget amendments, we usually try to calculate it in April so we can take action in May. Because I think that's when the city also has to take action, so. But yeah, we'll have to amend this budget. We're gonna have to see where we're at by the end of June, whether or not we have to amend the fiscal year 21-22 budget.
So you're looking for a motion to use the reserves for any shortfall?
Yes.
I'll make that motion.
A second.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Terry, aye.
Terrell, aye.
Connie, aye.
Reese, aye.
All right, now we have the budget billing discussion.
I'm gonna let Jenny hit this one.
Well, we've had strings of calls, people that are on budget billing, wondering how this is gonna affect their budget billing for the next year. We'll be figuring that after the next month's bills. It's kind of split with people, some people, yeah, that should be in there, other people think that it shouldn't be in there. If we do not include that, people's budget billing is gonna be lower. They're probably gonna be in arrears next year when we figure it. So I guess we just wanted to know from the board, how you guys want us to do that? Because they're on budget billing, and every customer is different. We have customers that have a $2,000 credit balance. We have customers that have a $1,000 in arrears balance. So you can't treat everybody differently. They're all gonna have different, it's gonna affect every single person differently.
So the people that are in the rears, how do we,
That rolls
Do we-
over into the next year, so theirs is gonna go up anyway.
so they start making it up the next year then?
Yes.
Yeah,
So their balance will
they
change
start
based
making it up
on,
with their May payment then. They're starting to make up what they've been in arrears for the previous year.
We usually make most of our adjustments in April, so.
And if they've
For
got a
instance-
positive balance, what, or does it automatically come out of that, or?
Yeah, for instance, my bill is due April 1st. So on April 2nd or 3rd, Leela will run the new budget billing for the people in that cycle. So if you're paid and you're up to date and you don't have a balance, your budget should turn out pretty even. If you have a credit balance, then your budget is likely gonna be less than what it was the previous year, because you obviously have a credit balance so that you paid less. If you have a debit balance, then it's gonna go the opposite and it's gonna go up.
so if you're in a perfect world, people are going to be behind the amount of their gas price adjustment for this cycle, right?
Right.
Right.
So if they're
But then there's
behind,
people like me that when I get every year, she says you need to adjust your budget billing down. It shows that your budget billing should only be $225. And I say, no, I wanna keep it $300 in case we have a bad winter or something like that. So myself, I have a $400 credit. So I'm gonna start out, and I even skipped the payment. I'm gonna start out the year with a $400 credit, so she's gonna do my budget billing again. My budget billing's gonna go down, but I'm gonna say, no, keep it at $300.
We're just trying to determine whether to include it or exclude it from budget building calculations.
I think you're gonna have to include it, aren't you?
That's,
Because
From the mechanics, that's the only way we see
Some are gonna have
it.
a shortfall, so they're gonna have to make that up over
yeah.
basically the next 12 months with a little
Yeah.
increase in their budget bill.
And I mean, depending on how they pay, shouldn't impact whether or not everybody gets the same credit or whatever,
Right.
so.
And what we kind of talked about is we could review it again in October. What that does is, it would help us if we see people that are still behind. We would be able to say, hey, you're in arrears still, so we need to up your budget or else you're gonna be in arrears after the winter months. The people that have credits, we wouldn't necessarily contact them because you want that credit going into the winter
Sure.
months.
Sure.
So I guess it comes down to, do we want to just go ahead and include it for now and then evaluate it in October rather than waiting in April?
Well, we would include it now, or not include it now, and then we would just reevaluate in October for anybody that might be falling behind if it was.
I just think if we don't include it now, we're just kicking the can down the road.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Okay. So we have a motion for that?
We really didn't change anything, so.
Well, the motion is just to include it. Does that fall within the current guidelines then? So we have,
Well, currently, we include everything in the budget billing. We
So that's
just
what we're
wanted the
talking
board's support
So we're
on,
not making any.
the only
so that when
change,
people start calling in and saying, you can't include that in my budget, you're not supposed to, we can say, yeah, it was discussed, we ran.
so the only
reports."
change is that we're gonna evaluate it later this year to see how it's tracking.
Yeah,
So that really won't require any action by the board if we do that, if we just evaluate later this year. Or do we need action to do that?
no, we
I don't
don't
think
need
so.
action, we
I don't
just
think
kinda
so.
wanted
Yeah.
to, that's why we put possible,
Okay.
if they,
All right.
I mean, we
So we'll-
ran different reports, we ran reports without it, we ran reports with it, we ran reports on people with credit balances, people with debit balances, people, and the other thing that makes it difficult right now is the budget billing cycle's not over yet, so
Mhm.
people haven't even paid their last payment, and some of them haven't even received their last bill yet. So,
Okay.
Okay, then we'll go into the penalty and disconnects, the discussion on time, the waiver.
Yes, under our, based on the discussions at the last meeting, we waived fees and penalties through June 30th, 2021. We have a few customers where it may carry past that point. So the question is whether or not we want to continue to waive that until all this is cleaned up, or if we just still want to stick with the June 30 date.
and we could also reevaluate it and bring it back to you guys at the May
At the
meeting.
May meeting.
Yeah, I was gonna say, see how big an impact it is, how many customers we're talking about, and that type of thing. Whatever.
And then we can just tell customers that might have an issue, that we're gonna reevaluate it at the May meeting, so if they feel that they are gonna go past June, just to kind of let them know.
Okay, so the action is that we'll move this item to May when we'll reevaluate it.
Yeah.
So we'll table it.
And
So
can we just
table.
get formal action that we are waiving penalties and disconnects through June 30th? Because we didn't really have the action on that at the meeting, in case our auditors ask when they're looking through our
Okay.
billing.
So moved. Yeah, second.
Roll call vote,
Terry, aye.
Caroline?
Connie, aye.
Reese, aye.
All right. Then, your report?
Okay, we had some discussions at the city council meeting this week. Steve Nadel came out and addressed the question of the electric petition. Alex Cutchy from IMU discussed some of the regional impacts from the weather event. And then I addressed some questions that the city had directed my way. And then Steve Nadel also made a statement regarding the letter in regards to the telecom petition. So we just briefly wanted to cover those topics. I'm going to go ahead and let Alex go first on some of the regional impacts from the polar vortex. Can we just have him
Yeah,
come
just
up where
have him
Nella
sit
was going
there.
to sit?
And while he's getting ready, if I could just add one more comment about, we sent out the first round of delinquents last week. And we had some calls on those already. We just want, if anybody contacts you or asks you guys, delinquent notices will still be sent out. We're gonna put a message on there that says penalties will not be applied through June 30th. But we have customers that don't even open their bill. They pay their bill when they get their delinquent notice. So even customers that are paying their bill on time, or not on time, paying their bill in full, sometimes they still wait for that delinquent notice. So we kind of decided as a team that we still want to send that out, so those customers still stay in that habit of being able to open that delinquent and pay it.
Okay, all right, Alex, yours.
Thank you, Mr. Weber, Madam Chair, members of the board. I'm Alex Cutchy. I'm an attorney with the Iowa Association of Municipal Utilities. I came down here on Tuesday to help kind of address some of the questions that the council may ask, as well as the mayor and any customers in the audience. I just wanted to kind of briefly talk to you about the regional impacts of the weather event. I'm sure you are all experts in this at this point. So most of the things that I'm going to say are probably just reiterating information that you already know. But during that week, about 5-day span starting February 12th, we saw a giant jump in the gas prices across the entirety of the Midwest. Electric prices were also impacted, and for the incremental additional electricity that was generated, we saw the megawatt hour price of electricity jump on the open markets as well. The gas pricing issue is something that utilities across the Midwest are facing, and they are handling it in different ways, but every single one of them is impacted by this event. Municipal utilities are really impacted in the Midwest, and I think it's important to know that thanks to prudent financial management, Iowa's municipal utilities are substantially insulated as compared to what we're seeing in some of the surrounding states. There's generally sufficient operating reserves to cover any shortfalls, to help insulate the customers, and because of these, we haven't needed to ask for the assistance that some of the other states have had to in order to help cover some of their municipal utilities. That being said, there are some utilities that are not as strong a financial position as HMU. We do have a state program that we actually received word of yesterday that is launching thanks to cooperation with the governor's office and IFA, that will actually provide low interest loans to utilities in order to help cover some of these costs and spread these impacts out to customers. So I want to draw your attention to that. There are a couple other programs that are going to be available. One is additional funding through LIHEAP and for low income eligible customers. Another is going to be a renter and utility disconnection prevention program that is going to be funded federally with $195 million. Those are something that we are urging utilities to take a look at. Different utilities in the state, as I mentioned, are handling this situation different ways. Some are spreading those costs out and essentially issuing temporary rate increases across all of their customers to help cover some of these immediate costs. That is the approach that all of the investor-owned companies are going to be taking. And those temporary rate increases will last anywhere from 6 months to a handful of years. They'll charge carrying costs for having, have that capital out to customers. They are still going to be earning their return. And I think a really good selling point for municipal utilities is the fact that they do have the operating reserves and they are willing to work with customers. They're not actually, in a lot of cases, having any of those rate increases. They're actually billing the customers for their usage and working with customers for payment plans and waiving disconnection fees, things like that. So I completely agree that it's a wonderful selling point actually for municipal utilities. We saw municipal utilities overwhelmingly hedge these costs by pre-purchasing gas and really insulating customers from what could have been. And there had been at times discussions about whether or not that pre-purchasing practice was even useful anymore because of the price of gas being as low as it was. So I would like to commend everyone for their efforts in order to insulate customers with the actions that were taken. As far as some of the legal requirements associated with the petitions, I'm sure you're aware of this, and Mr. Weber can speak to this more, but we found that there is no actual legal effect to any of these petitions that are going around. The customers that are signing them are not necessarily HMU customers, and it doesn't follow the statutory process. There's also no practical reason for a duplication of gas infrastructure, and electric infrastructure has monopolies based on exclusive service territories that exist within Iowa law. So that petition that has been going around doesn't have any legal effect, or in some cases is actually precluded under law or completely impractical for any type of implementation. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have generally about these issues, the polar vortex, the electric reliability issues in the SPP market, and the gas prices, if you have any. But I think my assumption is you all are pretty well briefed in this issue at this point.
Do we want to see if anybody online has any questions?
Sure.
It's up to you. I think the primary purpose of bringing Alex is just to emphasize the fact that this didn't just impact HMU. Like I said, it's basically Texas to Canada, from the Rockies to the Ohio River Valley. Almost every utility in that geographic footprint was impacted. In some cases, it rolled into even broader territories than that, almost to the point of being nationwide. So it was a huge event, huge impact. And like I said, from the gas industry standpoint, in the 85 years they've been operating, they've never had anything like this happen before. So.
There's one additional point that we've been hearing as a question is, what can utilities do to prevent this from happening again? That question was asked at the Utilities Board meeting on Friday of last week, and just about everyone in the industry said that this is not something we could anticipate happening, or we anticipate to happen again. And any actions that we would take would actually be more financially burdensome in the long run, rather than as weighed out against the risk of an event like this happening again. So, exploring issues like storage, a higher hedge, I reiterate that there may not be any need to do that. It may be actually financially burdensome to explore some of those options. Really, this is an issue associated with the Texas system not having weather hardening, and any type of infrastructure upgrades or proactive measures are really kind of more something we would expect to see out of Texas than anything in the Midwest.
One other item, Alex, could you just briefly hit on some of the things that IMU and other trade associations are doing with regard to requests not only the governor, but like FERC and other groups and organizations like that?
Sure. We had sent information and briefed the governor's office early when we started seeing this go through. During that time, we did request financial assistance because we weren't quite sure what the breadth of the impact across the entire municipal utility realm was. We knew it would be substantial over the 4 days alone, and the concern was that it would exceed, continue well past those 4 days. We got relatively lucky in that the spot pricing really fell off on that 5th day, but we did go, and we have been working with the governor's office as well as the finance authority and the economic development authority to put together a loan program to add, financial capital for municipal utilities that need to dip into that. So that's we just got approval of it. It's a $5 million pot of money with a 1% interest over 3 years if municipal utilities want to utilize that. And that will launch March 25th. We also have been working on the renter and utility bill disconnection prevention program, which is that $195 million grant essentially that comes from the federal government for issues associated with the nexus of COVID-19. So we've been working with the entire utility industry as well as the Iowa Finance Authority to help kind of get that program ready for launch, and we anticipate that will likely launch at the end of March. Lastly, we have been meeting with a lot of state officials, whether that be local senators and representatives on this issue, as well as some of the federal delegation, and briefing them on this issue, the importance of price capping, the importance of empowering FERC for a federal investigation, and making sure that this is an issue that if they realize if there's going to be any bailout for Texas, it needs to also cover Iowa as well and the entire infected Midwest.
So what we're trying to demonstrate is we believe we're doing a good job of looking at every opportunity, trying to bring it to the attention, not only statewide, but federal level. So we are still active in that. Thank you. Any other questions for Alex?
Appreciate your comments, Alex.
Yeah, one thing, you're looking at then, not setting so much a limit, but watching for price gouging. Because that's what happened, I mean, on the spot market there.
And there's, anyone can look at those prices and assume that there was probably malfeasance, that there was some market manipulation that occurred. I don't know if there's any evidence that has been released to really strongly support that, but FERC has launched an investigation into it. Their enforcement arm is investigating it. APPA and APGA, the two national associations, have sent joint letters to the president as well as the chairman of those organizations to let them know that needs to be investigated. A number of lawsuits have been filed on those issues as well. So everyone is really, really looking into that. It's just the nature of that process, and the investigation and inquiry will last probably a year or maybe more, and whether or not any refunds are ultimately issued would be something that we would see even further down the line as that process makes its way through the judicial systems or the administrative agencies.
All right. Well, thank you, Alex.
Thanks,
Appreciate
Alex.
you coming out.
Of course, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, all right. The other items on that list that I wanted to address was just briefly, again, kind of reiterating on Alex's comment about the electric petition. Steve Nadel basically said that in the form it was filed, it's not even a valid petition, it has no legal basis, no standing. And effectively, the premise that they made was false, because our electric rates have not changed since October or November of 2017. So we have made absolutely zero adjustment to electric rates in regard to this weather event. So if an individual customer's usage went up, it was because they used more electricity, not because we changed our rates. So I just wanted to make that clear in regard to some of those claims that were presented in conjunction with that electric petition. And I'll just kind of a side comment in that same regard is that I do in fact pay an HMU utility bill. So I'm right in there with the rest of all of our customers in paying these bills. Back to the telecom petition, one additional comment. Steve Nadel was primarily talking about the electric petition, but he did offer up to the city council that he, as HMU's attorney, had communicated with the petitioner's attorney in regard to the telecom petition, and basically informed the petitioner's attorney that the claims made in the petition are totally false and baseless. HMU does in fact make a profit. We demonstrated that. We quoted the section of code where depreciation does not apply to municipal utilities. And so those claims about HMU finance are totally false. And that was stated clearly by council and communicated to the petitioner's counsel. So that, hopefully, that addresses some of that. Unfortunately, the fact that the petition was brought does mean that we have to incur certain expenses based on Iowa code. And as long as the petition's enforced, we'll continue to have to face with those expenses, the appraisals, the cost accounting, the budget projections and everything else. And so unfortunately, because of a false claim, all of our HMU customers are being impacted financially. So that statement was made at the city council meeting. With that being said, the only other comment, Alex mentioned it briefly about the repayment periods. The question to be asked about, our repayment periods, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months. And the reality is, when we looked at that, what we said was we would look through the end of this fiscal year, June 30th, and work with our customers that needed to set up payment plans. We were waiving fees, we were waiving penalties. We felt that that was sufficient. Quite frankly, some of these municipals are still struggling with how they're going to pay the bill. They haven't even gotten to figure out how they're going to recoup the cost yet. So we're somewhat ahead of the curve on that. And the other part of it is, the main reason your investor owns are going 12 months or longer on payments is because they do their gas purchase adjustments on an annual basis. So when they incorporate this money into their gas purchase adjustment, it's automatically recalculated over the 12 months or the 24 months. So it's not like the utilities just stepped up and offered this. It's part of their tariff and part of their GPA filing with the IUB. It's a process they go through. And there was one large investor-owned utility, like I said, that literally had to go to the bank and is borrowing $100 million. And so they're structuring it to where the payments that they assign to customers, in this case their residential customers, are going to be hit close to $450 on the average residential gas bill. And so they're structuring their payments to where the customer payments actually make their loan payment. So that's how they've structured recovering the cost. But Alliant, and some of the others, they actually are still working on their filings with the IUB about how they're going to approach this whole thing. So they're still working through the process. So I just wanted to bring that up. Alex addressed the backup energy, from a standpoint of should we go back to looking at another air propane or some other type of backup. We've had conversations about that, whether to look at a micro LNG system, and the numbers just have never worked out. We are still evaluating that. We're still evaluating the $3.5 million it would take to upsize the Northern Natural Gas Pipeline. Those types of decisions just aren't made in a short order. It takes time to get all the data. It takes time to look at all the financials. You have to take time to project whether or not you can afford to pay those types of expenses. But we've been looking at that for quite a while. And with that said, I think we've addressed everything we wanted to address, unless there's any questions. We want to open it up to questions on the...
Any comments?
Nope.
Anyone on the Zoom call?
Anyone on the call have any questions? Whoops. Troy, did you have a question?
I did have one other thing.
Just a second, we can't hear you. Can you type your question? I can hear that he's talking, but I can't. Our speakers are turned all the way up and I can't hear what he's saying.
And how about now?
Oh, perfect.
That helps you put the microphone by your mouth.
Okay.
I think I would recommend, or not recommend, I'd applaud the Ken and the team that came last night to the city council meeting. I think the information there, and also in your meeting today, hopefully helps provide great detail and explanation of the events, of the billing process, and also expands upon how HMU buys their commodity and how they try to protect the customers, the ratepayers, by only doing the 70% explanation there, and then also offering up the lenient payment terms, since it was kind of hopefully a once-in-a-lifetime event, but also offering customers an opportunity to have a little more leniency per se on their payments. So I applaud the HMU team and the board for putting that information together and approving those. That was all I got to say.
Thank you. Appreciate the comment. Thanks a lot.
Yep.
I did have one other thing.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
There was one other thing that I brought up at the city council meeting, and I believe it's worth repeating here. And that is just a basic request to the public. HMU employees have had to withstand a lot of abuse and a lot of harassment over the course of this whole event. And I just wanted to make it clear to the public that those people are the ones that are there when your lights blink or flicker or go out. We restore your power, we make sure your heat's on, your water's hot, and we make sure the tap's on when you turn the faucet. So those employees support your utility. Those employees are very valuable to the utility, and they definitely do not deserve the harassment they're receiving. If you've got something you want to say, I'm here every day, bring it to me, but don't take it out on our employees. They don't deserve that type of abuse. So I just wanted to pass that on.
Very true. Anything else?
I just have one thing, it's kind of ironic, but today is Happy National Gas Workers Day.
Well,
So,
happy,
Happy National Gas Workers Day, so when you see our gas workers out there, please tell them that they're appreciated and thank them for their hard work.
You feel happy, Dora?
yeah,
I want to thank the board for their attention and for being available for this special meeting. I think we've made some progress here. And, you know, the fact of the matter is, we don't have a media staff anymore. And I'm not the best communicator. I've been trying to put bits and pieces out in the form like press releases or communicating to the paper. But, you know, something that we may consider in the past, I had never done the KNOD weekly thing or whatever they used to do, just simply for the fact that I can't think on my feet. If somebody asks me a question, I have to stop and think about it. You know, I don't have the quick response type of mentality. So I had always been hesitant to get on that type of media outlet, but we will try to do a better job, improve our communications with our customers. And we are planning to get some of that media support back in place here shortly. So we hope to be able to do maybe a better job of communication in the future. So.
all right, if there's nothing else, then we'll be adjourned till next meeting next week.
Thank you.
Thank you.